each of the past 2 years, when asked what was a highlight of the conference, attendees consistently have said, "We love hearing from our Educator of the Year." You, educators, cherish moments when you can hear insights from your own. It's a common theme of these conferences. So, who are we to disappoint you? We decided that the best way to kick off this year's conference was to give you exactly what you want. When asked what being awarded the NSDA National Educator of the Year means to her, Margo Batha responded, "It gives me the opportunity to demonstrate that extracurricular teaching and classroom teaching are not mutually exclusive, but rather two halves of a whole that are completely complementary." Margo Batha, our 2019 NSDA National Educator of the Year, is from Los Alamos High School in New Mexico. Margo has coached the largest debate team in New Mexico for over a decade and is well known for her passion for coaching, her mentorship of colleagues, and her leadership throughout the state. She then has deeply rooted the student learning of the activity into sound educational infrastructure. Please join me in welcoming Margo Batha.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. I don't think I'm going to be staying on this podium long. Yesterday afternoon, Annie, my good buddy here, realized that I needed a crate. I feel incredibly ridiculous standing up here right now. Actually, I'd like to think I'm following the path of our Governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, who is even shorter than I am, and also needed a crate for her inaugural speech in January. So I'd like to think that that's a really great example. I want to thank Scott, the NSDA board, the NSDA staff, particularly Lauren, for working with me throughout the process of becoming Educator of the Year, giving me guidance, giving me advice. Without them, I'd be a little bit lost right now. This is my one opportunity. As an educator, we rarely get a public platform to thank people. And there are a lot of people I do want to thank. I'll try to make it as brief as possible, but they're all very deserving of my gratitude. Special thanks goes to Trace Smith, former chair of the New Mexico District and chair of the Albuquerque 2020 Host Committee and new principal of East Mountain High School in New Mexico. He nominated me for this award, and he is a continual support to me. I also owe a debt of gratitude to my colleagues and friends from the Mount Holyoke College Master of Arts in Teacher Leadership Program. Ask me about a phenomenal program. And my students, and the New Mexico Speech and Debate Association for showing me how to become a teacher leader. I want to recognize my coach and my fellow coach and good friend, Sherry Bublitz, creator of the Los Alamos Middle School Speech and Debate Program. Her middle school program is why our high school program is so successful. And without the unwavering support of our parents, our booster board, and the Los Alamos Public Schools, we would not have the teams that we coach. Most importantly, I'd like to thank my husband, Steve Batha, who is in the audience today. He never, ever comes to ed conferences. This is a new thing for him and a very different environment from his usual one, which I'll explain in a moment. This June, we celebrated 35 years of marriage, and I can't wait to see where the journey takes us next. A special shout out goes to the weather gods. If we had not had a snow day on January the 28th, it is highly unlikely I would be standing up here today because my portfolio probably would not have been submitted. And as I look out at all of you, I want to express my appreciation for all the coaches and educators in this room who have given so many hours to speech and debate, often without compensation from their school districts and at times, great personal sacrifice. And so many of you have come up to me since yesterday afternoon and wished me luck and congratulated me, which was so moving, and thank you for that. I admire all of you for what you have done and will continue to do for our students. Even though we come from different backgrounds, different schools, and school districts, we have in common a passion for speech and debate, and we are all committed to instilling that passion in the next generation. So now let me launch into the rest of my talk, the meat of it. There's something on the board here, just hold up on that one. I didn't go for a lot of fancy PowerPoints today. I'm keeping it kind of minimal, but this one is kind of significant. So I want to say there's something about the start of a new school year that gets me thinking about New Year's resolutions and goal setting. Rarely happens on New Year's Eve, I'm too busy. We're in the middle of the school year. It's always in the fall. For me, as it is for many of you, summer is a time to reflect on the past school year and plan for the upcoming school year and the new speech and debate season. I've had a lot to reflect on, both personally and professionally this summer. I will treasure the memories from the last school year, from receiving Educator of the Year to seeing my son get married, from traveling to Europe twice this year, to receiving my master's degree. I know that I've been very blessed. However, last year was not a bed of roses. It was a year of intellectual discomfort, of spreading myself way too thin, a year of not having enough time to eat healthy foods, missing my daughter who is serving in the Peace Corps, and not having enough time to step back and reflect on my practice. I think that most of the people in this room can empathize with these difficulties. Quite honestly, all of us, probably not just me, need another 6 months of a summer break. As I've been busy planning for the new school year and as I've been reflecting, I decided to share with all of you an exercise that I do to focus my thinking on what I hope my life will look like in the coming year. Maybe some of you have heard of the one-word movement. Anyone? Okay, so some of you know, many of you don't. Good. If you're not familiar with one word, the idea is that a person chooses one word to sum up their goals and resolutions for the upcoming year after a reflective process. According to author John Gordon, choosing your one word begins by asking yourself these questions. What do you want to focus on this year? And that's where the PowerPoint comes in handy. Or what's in the way? What do you need more or less of? And what needs to change? I started doing this exercise with my students last year as a beginning of the year activity. And the process of asking these questions and coming up with a class word really helped build community and focus students for the coming academic year. When we start classes next week, I'll be repeating this exercise with both our speech and debate team and in my English classes. And I'd just like to say, I teach 5 sections of English. I do not teach speech and debate per se. The speech and debate coaching is completely extracurricular for me, so this is a double duty. As I speak, I hope that all of you will think about Gordon's questions that are up on the slide and try to come up with your word for the upcoming year. In my classroom, we usually take a full 90-minute block period to complete this process. I have students think and journal about their personal values, reflect on the past school year, discuss goals for the upcoming school year, and then choose their word. From their words, we choose a class word. Since we don't have that much time today, we'll be doing the express version. Today, we're going to create a word cloud with the word that you choose. When you've decided on your word, please go to menti.com and submit your word there. And you can do that anytime through this talk. The full website and the code are on the screen below the questions from John Gordon's website. This will create a word cloud of all of the one words that we have chosen. At the end of the talk, I'll share with you the word cloud that we as a group have created. I hope this word cloud will give us all a better understanding of our colleagues and a focus for the upcoming year. So go to the website on the slide and enter the word whenever you're ready. I've set up the website to accept up to 3 words per person so that you can choose your word or enter a word for those around you who may not have an electronic device. I know speech and debate coaches, they're generally very well equipped with electronic devices. However, you're not keeping track of kids today, so that helps a lot. Don't worry, I'll be leaving this slide up for the rest of my talk so you can think about your word if you haven't chosen one yet. If you have already done this process, and some of you are familiar with it, feel free to enter the word that you decided on perhaps in January. So I have to say, another influence for me, the success of using one word, comes from my own school district, Los Alamos Public Schools. Last year, our district, whoops, I bet I fell asleep there. Sorry, people. Whoops. Let me do that really quickly. It's always a tech thing. Last year, our district adopted one word, thrive. And the simple vision of, our goal is that every child will discover and develop their unique strengths and thrive at the next level. The simplicity of the word thrive and this simple goal has done wonders for our district's community culture. We are so much clearer about the culture we are trying to build and what our purpose is throughout the district. The word thrive even resonated with my students, who are usually pretty cynical. And several classes chose thrive as their word for last school year. So at this point, I want to also compliment Los Alamos Public Schools for understanding what I need to do to thrive and for giving me and Sherry time to attend this conference. Our colleagues actually return to school tomorrow for professional development, but there was no question from our respective administrators that we needed to be in Colorado Springs this week. To find that one word for myself this year, I spent a lot of time thinking. This year, I have been poked and prodded out of my comfort zone with discussions about race and equity, with the re-examination of my own work, and with the New Mexico Speech and Debate Association as we design clearer and more equitable tournament protocols. Reflection is good for the intellect, but going out on a limb makes you very vulnerable, and that's very painful. To accomplish this poking and prodding, I am lucky to have the ongoing support of 2 critical friends, something I cannot advise everyone enough. Always enlist the help of 2 critical friends, the ones who are honest with you. So my critical friends are Sherry Bublitz and Michelle Holland, who is my colleague and fellow revolutionary in the Los Alamos High School English department. I am indebted to them for their merciless editing of my work and for constantly questioning my thinking and challenging my assumptions. This reflection has helped me frame my goals, both personal and professional, and has helped me think about the kind of culture I want to build with my students. Because this reflection and the vulnerability it creates is so important to me, I almost settled on the word vulnerable as my word for the year. But vulnerable did not fit all that I knew I wanted to accomplish. I've also spent time thinking about my own team and its culture as I reflect on the one word for what my school year should be. I'm going to admit to all of you right now that in spite of this grand title, and I love it, it's great, as Educator of the Year and the accolades I've received, our team culture has actually been very difficult in the past 3 years. 3 years ago, the team was rocked by a cyberbullying situation. And we've been in recovery for the past 3 years. The situation forced me and our student leaders to really think about the culture of our team, our attitudes towards competition, and what it means to create an inclusive and welcoming environment for all students. I am responsible for not understanding what was going on at the time. I will just tell you, Snapchat is the tool of the devil. Yeah, I knew you'd all agree. And I wish I had nipped some of the behaviors I saw in the bud way earlier. However, Our whole team, including myself, has made enormous strides in understanding the causes of these behaviors and creating that more inclusive environment. If you've ever had to deal with a similar situation, let's get together, have a cup of coffee, and share strategies. I'd love to talk to you. Dealing with this ongoing change in team culture has given me another opportunity to reflect on the word I want to focus on in the coming year. So a completely different part of my life has also fueled my thinking about choosing my one word. This summer, I accompanied my husband, Steve, to the annual conference of the European Physical Society. In other words, it's a conference of international physicists. It was in Milan, Italy. I was on that. First of all, you need to understand that my husband is a real deal rocket scientist. He is a PhD scientist at Los Alamos National Laboratory and a fellow of the American Physical Society. As part of his work, he travels to conferences and business meetings, he writes papers, and he gives talks about his research. He's also blind. 18 years ago, he was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, a degenerative eye condition that causes a gradual narrowing of peripheral vision, and it creates extreme tunnel vision. Steve's journey with the loss of his vision is his story to tell. I don't presume to be his voice. He's got a very good one. I am, however, his seeing eye spouse, and that job has given me a window into the world of those who need support to access what most of us take for granted. In Milan, I spent a lot of time at the conference watching physicists, very interesting as an educator, and observing while eating gelato and drinking espresso. I will say, though, you have to understand, if you live in Los Alamos, New Mexico, home of the National Laboratory, you will observe a lot of scientists. It's fascinating. What really struck me in my observations was the lack of awareness for those with disabilities. The university where the conference was held was mostly physically accessible, since the city of Milan actually has a long history with blind education. But no one at the registration or from the host committee ever approached my husband to ask if he needed anything in particular to access the conference. Perhaps more importantly, very few of the conference attendees came up to him and struck up a conversation. It's understandable. No one meant to be exclusionary. There was simply a lack of awareness that a blind person has difficulty navigating social situations and initiating conversations, since they can't always tell who's around them. That said, in general, the people of Milan are some of the most helpful and friendly we've ever encountered on their travels. I am all ready to sign up again for another trip to Italy. The gelato has nothing to do with it. I've done some research, and I've discovered that academic conferences are some of the hardest places for persons with disabilities to access. I would argue that another academic space that can be difficult to access is the physical and intellectual spaces of our classrooms and of our activities. Even with the best of intentions, there is often little consideration, not always on purpose, it just happens, for those who may need different ways of being in those spaces. I do want to thank the NSDA for their work in accessibility and access. Their work in inclusion and my experiences with my husband have helped me understand how to create more inclusive spaces, but I have a long way to go. As I continued my reflection process, I found that I had many thoughts about the year: inclusion, leadership, equity, a healthy culture, but no one word to tie all of these ideas together. I also realized I had stated difficulties and problems, but there was no action involved to spur change. And that's what I really want to do. So I turned to a friend of ours, so to speak. I turned to the National Speech and Debate Association's Honor Code for inspiration. As a member of the National Speech and Debate Association, I pledge to uphold the highest standards of integrity, humility, respect, leadership, and service in the pursuit of excellence. And that's what I realized what word truly resonates with me. Humility. Humility, as defined by the NSDA in the code, is really a verb and a conscious action more than an adjective. To refresh your memory, the definition reads, a member does not regard oneself more highly than others. Regardless of a person's level of success, an individual always looks beyond oneself to appreciate the inherent value of others. For me, humility is the foundation for all other parts of the honor code: integrity, respect, leadership, and service. When we practice humility, we are leaders who embrace a culture of integrity and respect, and we are willing to serve whomever needs to be served. Something to consider. Both the word humility and humanity are from the same root, hum, from the Latinist humus, meaning earth and ground. We all come from one place, the earth, and none of us are more than the other. But how do we model humility? This is tough. The best method for practicing humility came from my husband, Steve, who recommended that I look at the work of Canadian author Louise Penny. How many of you read Louise Penny's books? Not a lot? We don't have enough time to read. That's another issue. He's pretty good. He actually reads way more than I do, and I love it. But we all know what happens to English teachers during the course of the school year. Penny writes detective stories, and they're very good. Actually, they're now on I've started one, and I'm going to go through the series, featuring Superintendent Armand Gamache, a superintendent with the Quebec Police. Gamache uses 4 statements to guide his investigations, and this is really interesting. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need help. These statements might also be the 4 most difficult statements to live by. But a life lived by these statements would be a fuller, richer, and more humble life. I just wish we could solve all of our problems as neatly as a detective story. As educators and coaches, we have a unique responsibility and a unique opportunity to model for our learners humility and to show each learner what it means to be human. We need to acknowledge our vulnerabilities and to create learning environments where students are comfortable questioning the status quo and comfortable taking intellectual risks. And in this day and age, we all know that kids are not as comfortable with this. It's so important. We need to heed the words of critical theorist Bell Hooks in her seminal essay, Engaged Pedagogy. To teach in a manner that respects and cares for the souls of our students is essential if we are to provide the necessary conditions where learning can most deeply and intimately begin. As educators and practitioners of rhetoric, modeling humility means that we are modeling rhetorical awareness. Humility carries with it an understanding that we are aware that any act of communication we engage in has an audience and a purpose. The success of our communication depends on our understanding of that audience and that purpose. In the English classes I teach, and in our speech and debate team, the one-word activity serves as a way of creating a collaborative culture and the start of understanding who our audience is and the purpose of our engagement together. By the second semester in my classes, the culture of understanding our word and the rhetorical situation guides students through the process of designing their independent passion projects. These projects, which create an advocacy for an issue or a solution to a problem and involve independent research and community engagement, can only take place after we lay the vital groundwork of establishing a collaborative culture. I firmly believe that all students find their voice and their power in a culture that starts with that one word, in August. I also know that as the teacher in the room, this is the hard one, I have to step to one side and become the guide. I have to practice humility, and I have to resist the urge to become the sage on the stage. But I'm getting that chance now. It's great. It doesn't happen often enough. But here's the question. Is humility really a word for just 1 year? I don't think so. I'm sure that this word will be informing my work for a lifetime. By adopting this word for the 2019-2020 school year, I've set some goals to move me forward from philosophy, which is important, to action. These are my goals. 1, to be a stronger advocate for those who are marginalized in our schools and in society by creating those inclusive spaces. To advocate for equitable funding for all academic extracurricular activities, especially speech and debate, in my school district and in my state legislature. To advocate for the integration of argumentation in all areas of my school's curriculum so that all students, whether or not they choose speech and debate as an activity, will reap the benefits of forensics. To advocate for a reading culture in my school, and finally, to prove the superiority of New Mexico chili over Colorado chili at the 2020 Nationals in Albuquerque. As I advocate for these goals, I need to keep reminding myself of that one word, humility, because this is an ongoing process. To enter into spaces that are not my own and to collaborate with colleagues means decentering myself from the conversation. I'm not always the expert, although thank you for giving me this platform, and I'm not always in control. We all need to remember humility as educators and leaders. As for the success of my goals, I'll have to come back to you with that story next year. So, before I conclude today, I need all of you to enter your word. I'm going to give you a second to do this. And then we get to see our cool, I hope, word cloud. You know how technology goes. We'll see if those gods are with me today or not. Everyone set? Shall we unveil our results? Cool. All right, let's see if this works the way it's supposed to. All right, I'm gonna have to refresh. I see 2 words, but I know there are more. Maybe. Aha! Look at that. Let me put it in present mode and let's see what comes up on top. This is so cool. I love doing this. Okay, look what the top words are. Growth, support, transparency, empowerment. But you gotta love working with a bunch of people who are trained in language because look at all of the words we've generated. This is amazing. So I will make sure this gets saved in a PDF file, and then it'll get uploaded to the conference materials so that all of you can take this back to your classrooms, to your teams, and get an opportunity to peruse this more closely, because this is very cool. This is collaboration at its finest. Yes? Can you enlarge it for us? Let's see if I can be that smart. Okay, here we go. Now this website, it's not, let's take a look and see if... Maximize the window. Yes, go to the green dot at the top. Upper left, thank you. This is why I have all of you, as I said, except now I've got this part, which is not the part I wanted. There we go. Now we'll go to that green. Okay, I think I'm maxed out here. Let me see if I can get to present. There we go. All right, there we go. Yay! My students, this is one of the good things about working in a very geeky school district. There is always a student who leaps up and goes, okay, Mrs. Batha, I'll deal with it. So here is what we've got. How cool is that? As I said, growth. I love how growth has come up at the top. Time, I am so with you on that one. Support, transparency, inclusion, reflection. Yes, time and reflection. There's just never enough of it in our jobs. Mindfulness, absolutely. Mentorship. This is great. So I will upload this so you can take this, do with it what you will or not. And hopefully this will inspire all of you to walk with me on this journey, whatever your word may be, and that you use these conference sessions as a time to start thinking about these words, that we grow, we are humble, that we are transparent, that we are empowered to take what we learn back to our teams and our schools. Thank you very much.